on film, so we're going to miss the sound. All right, so welcome to the debate box.
Debate box. Are you excited?
Yeah.
Should we have someone to pick up or a question?
Yeah, that's more fun.
All right. Who wants to pick the first question? All right. Yeah. Go on. Don't look. Close your eyes. Close them. Close them. All right. So I've got the first question here. Oops.
All right. So seems like it's an anonymous question or a comment or something. It says whey filler or packing machine. When did you find it worth investing in one, and what kind do you recommend?
All right. Anyone went from manual to packing? Yeah.
Hi everyone. So exactly 1.5 years ago, we were packing everything manually. You know, you had one scale, you put the bag on, and then you filled like 2, maybe 3 bags per minute. And our production got a lot bigger. So we thought, what the hell? We need to find ourselves something more automatic. And so we found this German company called Collision, and we went to visit their factory. And what they do is they're specializing in making weight filling machines. And we went there, we got ourselves a good bargain. They're very open for communication and very nice people. And we ordered ourselves a new one. And we went from weighing 2 or 3 packs a minute to 12 packs per minute. So now we can pretty much pack like, let's say like 80, 85 kilos like within 15 minutes, and that's not a problem anymore. Our production went like 5 or 6 times faster thanks to that. And if you want to know more about weight filling machines, then just find me.
I also invested in one maybe 3 years ago, an Action Pack from the US, just an off-the-shelf whey fill machine. Not necessarily because we needed it, but because we wanted to speed up the production. And yeah, it's an investment. It was maybe close to $7,000 maybe, including shipping. But you save a lot of money on labor costs because you're able to pack a lot faster and more accurately. So we haven't actually increased in volume since then, but I just found it to be a reasonable investment because you save on labor costs. And I haven't had trouble with the machine either.
And also on the ergonomics, it's a lot better for your body.
It's better for your wrists, yes.
So, apparently, my question. So,
Oh yeah.
no, it's more like, if you can tell me a little more, Tim, like when you bought one, what were you looking for? Like, how did you decide for that certain brand, and how do you know which one is more accurate?
Well, most of the machines are accurate. It's just a matter of adjusting them right for the amount you're going to pack, because you can open and close some certain things. And I asked around, actually, a couple of years ago, and one of the things that came up very often was that you want a machine that's reliable, and the people that I was talking to that had the Action Pack were very happy about that. And you want as little moving parts and stuff as possible. Like, it needs to be the simplest version. Because if you have this safety sensors and all this stuff, that's when you start to have trouble, in my experience. Anyone else? So, does that answer your request or question? Perfect. Who wants to pick next? We just go on. Mia wants to pick next, okay. You want to read it?
No, hell no.
Okay. Okay, this is an interesting one. It's also anonymous, which is totally fine. Should roasters share cropster profiles? What are the pros and cons? I'm not going to answer anything. Anyone?
Klaus, you get the mic here.
Yeah, because I'm actually not a roaster. I haven't roasted in our company for 4 years. But I would, because I'm pretty sure someone's going to say they're pros. I would say one of the cons would be that we start to become too similar. Because, and you know, if you see someone else doing really well, you think like, that's what I want to do as well, and this works for them. And I'm a big advocate for us not becoming too similar, but for us to really pursue our own taste. I think it was great to see at the cupping how different we like things, and it's not wrong or right, it's just that we have different preferences.
I have a con as well. I'm not necessarily a con, but I have a con, because it can make roasters a little lazy, so they will just copy your profile and not really actually taste and investigate what's good for their machine and their setup. So that's one of the pitfalls, I guess, if you just copy everyone else. Anyone else want to comment on that? Any pros? Sharing profiles?
Well, I'm not a roaster either, but I was just thinking from like a chef's perspective. Chefs, they do share recipes, and that has taken the food industry, you know, miles ahead. Would that be similar for roasters? I don't know.
There's a guy behind you.
Yeah, that's also what Mans just said. You have a profile which you can follow, but if you have a different heat application with convection, or it doesn't taste the same, so you still cannot really share the same profile. It's just a basic idea about maybe development time and temperature and those things, but the end result will still taste different, I think.
And Morten Munchau, you want to?
Yeah, I was just thinking you have to distinguish between if people have to share or if they can share. Because if they have to share, you would have to diversify, because otherwise it's clear that you are just doing the same as the others and they did it first. So that would actually be an argument for diversification. But if you can copy without sharing your own, then it's true, of course. And I also think there's an idea, that the laziness would be a problem, right? Why don't you, just learn the craft and should invest that.
I certainly know that most of the stuff that I know and I've learned in coffee is because I've been sharing myself, so people open up and share their knowledge. And I think it could be the same with roast profiles, because the machines are, even though they're the same brand, very often they are not acting the same. And you have different green coffee, not always, but most of the times.
So this was my question. I forgot to put my name on the paper. So this question came up at Roasters Guild of Europe in Estonia, and it was kind of shocking how many people in the room really want this feature added to Cropster. I just think that we have such a small slice of the pie that I think that as a community we have so much more to learn from working together, rather than kind of operating on our own in our own shops and doing our own thing. As you guys have been saying, like it's there's just so many variables that play into it, and also we aren't serving to the same consumer either. So, I mean, I think it would help us rather than harm us as an industry. And yeah, I'd like to see more of it for sure. So
sharing is caring. Anyone else?
Yeah, what I think about this one is I'm used to work like a chef also, not follow so many recipes, no. But what I mean, I think if you can share your know-how or your experience, like Klaus did yesterday, about or you've struggled with something and you can talk to each other and learn from each other, I think that's a good way. But I'm not a roaster, but I think if I will only follow these curves, I will think my work will be pretty boring, I think. You can roast manually or automatically, and our roasters do it pretty much manually, because that's one of the key things to handle the roast and to be there. Like a chef want to be there when you cook your food and put it in the oven and come back in auto-tuning stuff, more like to the handcraft. But I think a lot of experience sharing, like today, or in different people sharing their know-how is necessary for the industry.
But when Klaus is saying that he thinks it's a bad idea, which I think too, like just a mechanical sharing of files is not sharing really. But would you agree that you should maybe share knowledge in the way that you discuss, how you approach and how you make a roast strategy and product strategy on different products.
Really shouldn't ask me because I'm not a roaster. So,
in the more
I think, yeah, I mean, it's just, I come from a barista background where we've certainly always been sharing a lot of ideas and recipes, but it's, my background has always been sharing the ideas behind the reasoning why you do certain things. Whenever we've done barista classes, it's more important to get people to understand why we chose to do something rather than just showing them how to do it. And I think it's the same with roasting. If you just end up sharing profiles, you'll just share such a little slice of the bigger picture. If you end up sharing cuppings and talking about taste and what you want to get out and sourcing strategies and so on, I think that's far more valuable.
Yeah. Okay.
Should we move on to the next, or
Next question.
Yeah.
Box.
Yeah, you wanted to have a little peek.
Don't look.
Okay. Oh, sorry. And I have dyslexia, so I might read it totally wrong. Are local traditions taken into consideration when teaching farmers? For example, the farmers who does well could be in the community's eyes using black magic and potentially stigmatizing them and exiling them from the community. A scary scenario for the farmer. Rasmus, who's Rasmus? Can you elaborate a little bit on the question?
Yes. Yeah, it was actually to you because it was from yesterday's speech. It's I've grown up in East Africa and experienced through all levels of society, or in African society, no matter where you're from, there's always some part of religion that plays into the roles of your day-to-day life. Now, the question is asked from an observation done in Tanzania, where you would have a group of farmers that were taught how to farm and be really popular, not necessarily in the same community, all of them. So one would do good in the community, but instead of teaching all the farmers in the community, you'd have this one farmer doing really well and the rest doing really bad. So the rest would actually be thinking like, okay, what's he doing to have such a good productivity, and exiling him from the community, which is a really scary situation for the farmers because their whole life is based on that community and not being exiled from it.
So I think Tanzania is a little bit different, and I would say I have less experience with Tanzania. I often feel during farmer trainings and sort of identifying the lead farmers there that they may well have a neighbor who's a lead farmer. So what we do typically is that we identify a person that's really important in the community. So it's already an opinion maker, a person that has influence in society for, whatever reason. Sometimes religious reasons, but also could just be a very sort of person that people admire. And that's how you have to choose them, otherwise you won't get anywhere. I do feel in Tanzania that people are less inclined to look at their neighbors. There could be a really well-maintained farm and the neighbor could be doing nothing. And the neighbor who's doing nothing doesn't really look to the neighbor who's highly productive to sort of get any clues. It's very different in Rwanda, in Burundi, in Kenya, where I probably have more experience, to be honest with you. I think in Kenya, typically farmers within sort of groups where you have a lead farmer are more competitive, more driven, and they actually start competing on how many kgs per tree, and it's a little bit more communal. So I would say, to my impression of culture is that Tanzania is a little bit, and especially in the south, where I probably have the most experience with farmer training, it's a little bit of a different place. And also I have definitely seen black magic, not happening, but people who believe in it and are suffering under some sort of spell and cannot work, and it is a real thing. But I would say more often
than not, the lead farmers are chosen so carefully that you don't really get into that sort of trouble with farmer training. Does that answer the question?
Perfect. Anyone else want to pick? Yes? Some hungry eyes who wants to pick?
Box. Right. Opinions on vacuum packing your coffee. Which machines to recommend? Okay, so we can maybe also have the flushing in that one. I don't know. Who will pose the question? Yeah.
Anyone wants to answer? Maybe. No? Anyone has a vacuum packing machine to recommend?
Can you ask the question one more time?
Okay. Opinions on vacuum packing your coffee. Which machines to recommend?
So not only recommendations for machines, but why people are maybe using those machines or why not. Because I've heard a lot of different opinions, but I don't really know too many people who actually use one. So just general thoughts.
Yeah, but Tim, do you mean like vacuum, the hard vacuum, like the bricks?
Yeah, but also flushing maybe.
Yeah, so it could be flushing. So we'd probably have some people in the room that decide to flush. Some people decide not to flush. Why and what to recommend?
I highly, just before anyone answers, I highly recommend reading the Illy Science of Quality. It's kind of a heavy book, but there is a good paragraph on packaging and why they're packing the way they're doing. There's some research there behind there. I have a vacuum machine from Teneo in the UK. It's actually a Japanese-made or Korean-made machine, I don't remember. That you have the opportunity to gas flush as well. And from the testing we've done early on, and I know Solberg has done testing also, it really makes the coffee taste better for a longer time if you do flush with nitrogen or an inert gas and then vacuum seal afterwards. It doesn't need to be in this kind of brick vacuum, it seems like. If just sealing the bag, I've found them to be oxidized quite fast actually, and I do get samples from a roaster who shall not be named, who is not flushing. And I always find these samples to be slightly stale because it always takes a couple of extra days to ship his coffee. So in my experience, it's better to do with nitrogen flushing and sealing, but it really depends on your style of roasting and how fast you prefer to drink your coffee. We prefer to rest ours for maybe up to 9 days before we use it, and then nitrogen flushing is definitely important. But also storage, like if you store it in a nitrogen flush bag in the sun or something, or in a hot space, you'll have the coffee deteriorating much faster. So you've got to think of everything. Anyone else on that?
But I remember from the Solberg Hansen, which is probably an old thing they did, that when they tasted it, the conclusion was that everything that was under 30 days actually tasted better when it wasn't flushed. And then after that, it's sort of, if you keep it for longer after roast day, it makes sense to.
Wasn't there research? Didn't someone do research for SCAE?
There was at Roasters Guild.
Yeah, we need the mic. We can't hear you on the film.
This isn't my research, so I don't think I'm allowed to talk about it because it's not published yet. But there was.
Give us a little clue.
Basically they tested a whole bunch of packaging, and they found that a lot of the valve packed bags, a whole bunch of the normal ways that we normally pack and seal coffee really are non-functional. I think they found the most effective one was when people are packing in milk cartons with the screw top, with the sealed screw top.
Yeah, or the metallic is working.
Yeah.
We need the microphone.
And also, Joanna just said the metallic canisters as well. So yeah, basically, kind of the research that they found kind of flips our ideas of how we pack and store coffee on its head. And I think when that research is published publicly, that it's going to make some ripples in the industry.
Yeah, so it looks like it's not at all what we think it is. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question here.
Nothing says fresh like paper bags.
Touching upon that subject, I find it interesting considering top tier specialty coffee, that we can locate coffee when it's at its best during a season and potentially vac pack it and freeze it, and then have on-demand coffee on its optimum roast day for consumption with the best point in the season to be consuming it, and then you can just take it out of the fridge on competition day and off you go. So I think there's a lot of potential, and you can do that with your, your featured special above 90 points coffees on your own brew bar. If you should get the perfect roast at that, I don't know, 5 months from harvest magical moment, you don't have to worry what's available in April time, for the London Coffee Festival. You can have it whenever. Exciting prospect. So I say go, vac pack.
Maybe it's the end of the European roasters.
Yeah, Joanne?
No, I can just share like a little of my experience. Is I used both like nitrogen flush and vacuum. But what I found were like I was storing a lot of tests on this because it were a little like, okay, I think this is the good way of doing it. And on the same time we were looking at shelf life, or how long the coffee should be on the shelf. And it's two reasons like why I don't vacuum anymore, and it was just that our coffee were not being tastier like within the first 3 months or 2 months, like at least. And after that, like I didn't really enjoy our coffee, however. And the other thing were that when we were actually like opening the bags, they tend to age quicker. So as soon as like I had 1 cup from that bag, it aged quicker. So, and I know it's been we should be better at names, but somebody did the research on green coffee. Was it Fabio Brem? Yeah, on this, like in how you, what's happening when you're packing how on greens, and they have started to look at the brown as well.
Should we go to the next? Is that okay for you? Yeah.
Debate box.
Who wants to? Maybe one of our Japanese guests. Huh? Don't look. Oh, thank you. So let's see. And it's not a democracy here, so we will censor if it's not appropriate questions.
Dictatorship.
Yeah, Should we change our methods? ? Coffee in East Africa has declined in 43 years. Are we still just teaching them as we have done the past 43 years? So the question is, should we change our methods? Someone wants to answer that. Did you write this, Mia? Is that a question for yourself?
No, did you ask this question?
Yeah.
Sorry. What's your name again?
Rasmus.
Rasmus asked. Should we change our methods? I think the challenge with production isn't really the farmer training per se or the methods. I think it's just the other challenges with development surrounding it that causes production to decline. I think there are many sort of fantastic NGOs and organizations out there who is approaching farmers with sort of new methodology. I think the coffee industry, to a large extent, is dependent on agronomists that were maybe trained some time ago. I think, to be fair, I want to also say that one of the old professors at the Coffee Research Foundation in Kenya, I just have to say that they are sometimes very up to date with what's going on in other parts of agronomy, and has a fairly holistic approach to soil renewal and sort of how to use inputs and agrochemicals, and even some of them are 70 years old. They read a lot, and you know, the world is becoming smaller. So I don't think it's quite accurate to say that we're always far behind. I think in some cases, absolutely. But I do think there is a fair amount of update within the industry, and you know, so many NGOs and so many also private companies like Yara and others who's doing a lot to try to update people on what's going on. So I wouldn't always say it's sort of ancient methods. I think that was a little bit misleading yesterday, and I want to say something about it, but yeah, sometimes it is, and sometimes people are very up to date.
All right, any more on this? How about you, Angel? Any input? You source also from Ethiopia a lot. So so you mean the amount is declining, right? Not the quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the quality declining as well?
Maybe.
I mean, I miss some of that some George Howellish Kenyas. I don't find them anymore. I don't know why. Maybe it's...
Are you buying his coffee though?
Huh?
Are you buying his coffee?
No.
Oh, maybe that's why you're missing it. Yeah, Mia has another comment.
Yeah, and maybe other people who's sourcing coffee in Kenya or East Africa can sort of add. I will again speak about Kenya because it's where I feel I know the soil the best and sort of the history of the country the best. I definitely think the release of new varieties and pushing them on farmers has affected cup quality. I think there is also, like we were talking about yesterday with inputs, that the usage of them and sort of the very strict focus on nitrogen and sort of cheap substitute inputs has made a soil quality change a lot in the last 30 years, let's say. I think there is a significant overuse of nitrogen, which is what all farmers like to see, because you put nitrogen in the soil and you get a very, very beautiful tree, super green canopies, but it's not really helping the development of sugars. It doesn't really create fruit, it just creates a lot of leaves. So I do think there is a pretty big issue with soil acidity in Kenya in particular, but East Africa in general. I think you know, it's by default lacking potassium, and very little has been done to sort of balance that. So no, that's my comment anyways.
And I think, I know Nordic Approach, we're working with a couple of small farmers in Ethiopia where they encourage them to start using compost. And I think one of the farmers did and had increased volumes without spending any money on inputs, because you make it on yourself on the farm. Maybe it wasn't a good compost, but at least even so, it's better than nothing. So I think, you know, that could be a great solution for especially East Africa, where farmers don't have money for inputs. They could, if they were taught how to make good compost, it would be fantastic.
Angel has a comment.
Actually, the first time I went to Africa, I went to Burundi, then Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, and I remember I always asked the same question to farmers, like saying, what are you doing with your fertilizers? And you know what they all told me in all the countries? We are putting on vegetables, because vegetables, they grow faster and we can sell them faster. We can get money bigger, money faster, basically. So I think that's sort of the question. When I travel to origin, I always like to talk to farmers, because I think it's what we forget the most of the time.
That's what we were trying to encourage yesterday with Klaus's talk. Get down and start talking to the farmers.
Yeah, and also the variety thing that Mia just touched upon is that a lot of the farmers are grafting on Ruhr 11 on these old SL rootstocks, and I think we would agree Ruhr 11 has a lower taste quality than the SL28, for example. Batian is also starting to spread, and the point for a lot of the agronomists has been graft this on, you'll keep your existing rootstocks, you get a higher yield because Ruhr 11 is less prone to disease and will yield more. But we'll see the declining quality. Maybe that's part of the reason why some of us think that coffee was better from Kenya some years ago. I also do think a large part is romanticism. A lot of us remember the first natural we carried a few years ago that was a good natural, and oh, that's the best coffee we ever had, but it's like things are always better the longer time distance you have to them. And I think for some of the farmers that I've spoken to as well is that you want to, as a roaster, maybe to try and convince them, don't change to Rure 11. It's better for the taste quality, you'll get a higher price. But I can't necessarily guarantee that. Like I can do my part and try and pay a higher price, but if you're a farmer, I can't look you in the eye and say, no, you should go for the absolute best taste quality if I can't guarantee that you're going to get paid better. And one last thing before I give it the mic. The farmers last year actually told me that they had been very surprised that a lot of the grafted Rure 11 hadn't actually performed very well. The SL varieties that they had kept had actually given far higher yield than Rure 11. Maybe because they hadn't put as much fertilizers in the soil the year before. A lot of them were trying to do more organic compost. But I don't know exactly the reasoning behind it. I don't know if there's agronomists on the ground that knows. But what's interesting to me is that the taste quality was the best that we've seen. The best we've seen from Kenya ever, basically.
I think that's a really fantastic thing, working with single farmers, actually, because they actually hear things and they read things and they have the experience. And I never tell people what I think they should be doing. I always say you have to figure it out for yourself, be an adult. It's a great opportunity for roasters to dig into this question and actually just ask the farmers to make a small sample from their farm of Riru, of Batian, of SL, because they usually have all three of them, and then decide what they're going to plant out based on the cupping. I know even after we broke up, Klaus, that we did a cupping at the dry mill from a small estate that had sort of separated the varieties. And it's very interesting, and the varieties bear different cup qualities because in Kenya we have two crops. So you have the early crop and the late crop. The late crop is the main crop, but for the early crop on the lower altitudes, the best coffee by far is from Riru and Batian for some mysterious reason, and in main crop they taste terrible in most cases. I think also maybe some of the reason has to do, and maybe Tim knows more about this, has to do with the fact that these Riru 11 and Batian in most of the strains that has been released, but there has been really hundreds of strains released with the farmers without much thought behind it, it seems. They lack a taproot, so they need a lot of feeding to perform. I have some pictures on my Instagram as well of the seeds, just from pulping both the cherry and the seeds from all three varieties. And I think it's an interesting question for farmers. You can have a very high bearing Riru 11, but you won't have much double A, which is to a farmer what will probably fetch them the best premium no matter how the cup quality is. So they're smaller, there are more cherries on the trees, but they're smaller beans. So what economic effect does it have? I think it's a really interesting question, which of course I haven't really been digging into, but I think that's a great opportunity for roasters to connect with farmers and not tell them what to do, but say, would you be interested in making me a sample, and we'll discuss it, we'll cup it together. Huh?
Pay for it.
And of course pay for it, yeah. But the answer is in the cup at the end of the day.
Should we have another go for a little Who Wants to Pick?
The last one, I think.
Yeah. Swedes are really keen on picking notes here.
And we just decided we're going to keep all the notes, so it's not going to be wasted work, so that we can be inspired to subjects that we take up next year, if there's going to be a next year. We found out about that.
So, and who has a Loring in the room? This question is for you guys. Any thoughts or approaches on not hearing the crack on lowering?
But you can smell it, and then you can find out on what temperature does the crack happen. And it's really easy with the lowering. Like most of the cracks go between, like, let's say 203 until 206. And no matter what the coffee is, you can already start predicting, and you can just smell and find your crack. Yeah, it's first maybe a little bit different. The lowering doesn't have so much how to say individual touch as the other machines, but it's easy actually. You just need to get used to it again.
And now I know there's someone developing an electronic ear that you put into the roaster so it'll detect the first crack. And you can program, there's another guys working on the same technology. They're trying to program when the crack starts to roll. Wouldn't that be cool? Like a little trumpet ear. You know the ear that on the back of the mouse? You have that in the roaster. Anyone else want to comment on that?
Yeah. Do I think it's super frustrating not to hear the first crack. Mainly, I think, because I'm used to having that as a tool to detect the first crack. But I have been forced to develop other ways of noting that. Smell is one. You can see the rate of rise curve changing around the first crack. There's color, smoke. There's many ways to detect. To detect the spot at the curve where you want to start counting development time, and it's sometimes hard to be forced into to change, but that's what the only thing that not hearing the crack does. But it is frustrating.
Yeah, so this goes, so we are actually having that issue trying to find out how we can hear the crack. And actually Michael bought one of these midwife things in wood. So we can actually, if we put it on the window, we can actually hear the crack. So there must be a way we can.
Two old grandpas roasting on the Lord.
By the way, so that's pretty low tech for a high tech machine. But so there is a way to do it probably, and we have been working on different sounds, but they have to be heat resistant and they have to be noise cancelling as well. Because you can't have the motor and the drum and the airflow influencing it, so you won't get to hear it. So. Yeah, so we're working on it. It's one of my biggest priority, and the engineers, they just go, oh no, every time I ask, because I want that feature. And they want to do other stuff, develop the machine to be more consistent from, this is mostly what we're doing now, and try to get all the models to have a consistent thermo effect on the beans, things like that, you know. So. But what I'm seeing is that we were very motivated to work on a microphone solution, but then we found that roasters sort of got used to it. You didn't, sorry about that. But got used to it and never think about it because it's so consistent, and it's always, the crack is always at 199 or 201. So don't think about the temperature as something, it's just because the probe is where it is. So the norm would be around 200. So at 198, you start looking for it in the trier. And you see smoke, you see the beans moving, and then you mark the crack. And so first you nail your profile, you know where it is.
Yeah. Okay. We used to be able to make coffee without refractometers as well, so I guess we can roast without listening to cracks. We have to end the debating.
We are, wow. And as I said, we decided to keep all the questions. Also the one that have been up in the debate, so we can get some good speakers for next year.
Thank you for participating. Was this a fun exercise, or should we keep this for next year as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. What time is it now? I think it's time for our two last speakers.
Yeah. So Christian.